Hi, welcome to Box on the Box Rock and Celluloid. Today I've got some rock for you, and it's a random review of Black Sabbath's 7th studio album, Technical Ecstasy. Here it is. Cool hypnosis cover, two robots having sex, sort of. This is actually the kind of 1996 Sanctuary reissue I've got of it. This is a pretty cool, probably the first good CD remasters of this. I've got all the Sabbath albums on this from this particular era. So why a random review of them? This album, well, when I was a kid, typically the first 6 Sabbath albums were seen as the classics. I'd been exposed to Paranoid, Master Reality, and Sabotage when I was very young. I'm talking about the age 9, 10, 11. Later on I got Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and Sabotage have since become my two favourite Aussie era Sabbath albums, along with Master Reality. I don't really go to the first two much. Volume 4, I sort of really like some of it, but I don't think it's as consistent. So I didn't actually hear Technical Ecstasy till about the late, early noughties, actually, not the late 90s. I had a pupil, a guy called Nick, and he had that, and he had Technical Ecstasy, Never Say Die, and he taped them on cassette for me. And that's when I first became exposed to them. You were sort of told to avoid Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die when you were a kid, although I remember at college one guy saying, "Oh, Technical Ecstasy is really good." So eventually, I listened to it on cassette, and slowly over time, I thought, I'm going to get the CD of this, because I grew to like it more. And what I'm going to do today is really just give a bit of analysis of it, and just sort of contextualise it in the sort of lineage and the history of Sabbath, and why I think it was not as well liked at the time, and how it's perceived now. So doing this, actually, they released a special edition of Technical Ecstasy a while ago. That's my paper rustling, with a few notes on, and Stephen Wilson did a remix of it, and I actually decided to listen to the remix heavily in order to do this review. And Wilson's done a great job. The Technical Ecstasy is a pretty cool sounding album, but what he did with his remix, and I strongly recommend you check out this, you'll find it on YouTube, probably shared by fans. It might be on the proper Sabbath YouTube channel as well. He just got things a little sharper, a little crisper, got a better balance. So I'll refer to that. But the album opens with Backstreet Kids, and what's interesting about this is it's got a different groove, really, than Sabbath used before. Dun 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 dun. There's sort of a gallop, but a nice kind of moving power fifth, kind of of a geezer's bass, and Iommi doing that. Really good drumming by Bill Ward, of course. Yeah, I like this track. I'm not keen on the chorus. Nobody's ever gonna take my rock away from me, or something like that. Ozzy goes into a bit whiny mode on it. I would say this album is probably the first where Ozzy, some of his vocals are really good, but that little bit of whininess can start to come in, that he will start to use from Blizzard of Oz onwards. There's none of like the kind of raw, guttural power of the early Sabbath, and then of course that really kind of higher register singing from Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath and Sabotage, where Ozzy really just hit his peak for me. So it's good. It's got a kind of Jolly Who style middle, with some cool kind of keyboards. The keyboards are prevalent throughout this. Forget the name of the guy, Joe Woodruff, I think, plays the keyboards. The solo on this has got a very brassy sound, and even the remix by Stephen Wilson it doesn't contain that totally. That's not as pleasant. It's got an abrupt end, which is quite interesting. Something that bands kind of do now. It just kind of stops dead. Sabbath have done that before, haven't they? Hole in the Sky going into Don't Start Too Late. But this is a good opener. It's not a great opener, but I do like it. Then you've got You Won't Change moves to the next track. And this might be my favourite track on the album, certainly one of the favourite tracks. It's got a spooky start, and it's got a really cool kind of organ riff. Minor key. Another frenzied solo at the end from Iommi, but with a better sound. The tunings aren't as heavy on this album. I think that what I would say this album and I've got loads of note on this track. This is more of a hard rock album. Sabbath get more experimental from Volume 4 onwards, but there's some really heavy shit on those albums, whereas this album isn't as heavy, and I think it's Sabbath trying to maybe commercialise their sound a bit more, trying to sit in more with what's going on in music. You've got to remember at this time, you had Boston's album coming out in 1976, Kiss have started to get popular, you've had the Montrose debut, Ted Nugent's debut, and so forth. AOR, sounds of bands like Styx will start to get more popular. Not you hear anything like that, but there is an emphasis on melody and trying to be a little more commercial. But I really like this track, and the next track's excellent as well. It's Alright. So what's unusual about this track? It's the first lead vocal ever done by Bill Ward on the Sabbath album. He will do one more on the Never Say Die album. I actually listened to the remaster remix of this. For some reason, I don't know if it's a Wilson remix, there's a mono version single as well. This is really good. You wouldn't know it's a Black Sabbath song if you didn't know, so to speak. It's got a nice Beatles style tune, it's got a really nice middle section. I really like Bill's vocals, it worked really well. Apparently Ozzy was really supportive. Oh, Bill, you should do the vocals for this, you've got a great voice. It's just one of those unusual album tracks, but it was actually released as a single, and you will find a really crappy promo video, pretty bad quality, online. Bill's got quite short hair and sunglasses on when he's singing it. I think Ozzy doesn't appear in the video, but I do really like this track. I think it's excellent, so well worth checking out. And then track 4, which finished side 1, is Gypsy. Got a good Gerald Woodruff's keys are pretty prevalent on this. It's got a good Creek chorus. There's kind of got R, B and V's. Are you gonna be a gypsy? Again, very melodic, very poppy. And the middle section recalls sort of bands like Queen, Tennessee ELO. At the time, you've got to remember, certainly British bands, there's no such thing as a big heavy metal band in Britain. This is what people don't realise. Sabbath a popular concert pub, but you're not going to have bands on top of the pops and stuff. So Queen are probably the most heaviest band, and you can hear their influence on Sabbath at this point, and Judas Priest on the Segments of Destiny album. But this track's really good. It's got a cool kind of drum intro as well. Again, it's quite poppy, quite majory in that respect, kind of recalling Am I Going Insane? Not in style, but in using that major key on its intro. Obviously, Am I Going Insane is I think it's the 7th track off the Sabotage album. I do like this track, again, not as much as the other two, but it's a decent side 1. Moving on to side 2, you've got your other next sort of key cut for me, which is All Moving Parts Stand Still. Really strange lyrics about this. It's about what you call a transvestite then, but probably a trans person becoming the president. Really interesting, like Geezer Butler, his lyrical subjects and awareness. This is really good. It's got a cool groove. So it's a bit kind of funky, a bit slinky. So something slightly different again for Sabbath. It's got a really good freak out middle section in it. And it's good again. The Wilson remix just brings out a little more clarity. I should say as well, you can hear an alternative version of mixes from this album, from the special edition, deluxe edition as well. So lots of stuff out there. So this is a really good track, great opener side 2. And then you've got Rock and Roll Doctor. The more I listen to this track, the more I'm enjoying it. This is a really short track. It's about 3 minutes 20, 3 minutes 25. It's got more of a, kind of sort of rock and rolly type riff. I do like Ozzy's vocals on this. It's quite aggressive. I think the chorus is a bit repetitive. He just repeats, I've got to see a rock and roll doctor. Oh yeah, it's not a massive amount of imagination in this, but it doesn't outstay the welcome. This was a single again, I think, and you can see a promo video. So again, not a great track, but I do like it. Then the next sort of mega track on this one, which is She's Gone. This is a beautiful ballad with acoustic guitar and strings. So the Stephen Wilson remix really does do something great with this, because the acoustic guitar originally has this sort of boomy bloom you sometimes get with acoustic guitars. You know, when they're recorded, they can pick up a lot of kind of bass from the body of the acoustic guitar and the air around them. And what he's done, he's kind of trimmed that and made it sort of crisper and brighter and controlled that. He smoothed off the strings on this and balanced them better, and you can hear the harmonies. And he's pulled Ozzy's vocals back a little bit to sit. Really good, great acoustic intro by Iommi. Really beautiful parts. Some people don't like this track. They prefer the mix, the alternative mix version without the strings. I don't understand that. Ozzy's vocals excellent on this. This is where his kind of mournful whininess, for want of a better expression, comes to the fore in a really good way. And he does that, you know, does the broken heart aspect of the lyrics, brings them to life. So I keep straining my glasses, keep tilting. Yeah, it's kind of got was Nick Drake vibe on the strings. If you've heard Nick Drake's first album, Five Leaves Left, this is something I really like about this track. And then the album finishes track 8 with Dirty Women. I've always found this track quite strange because I think this is the weakest track on the album. It's the only track off this album they kind of played live later on, and I never really understood. I mean, looking at it, it's got a crazy staccato middle. It's got a good solo. Again, quite melodic harmonies. Dirty Women, you know, those kind of sliding harmonies. And on the Wilson remix, he actually brings them out at the end as a kind of add-on. So when the track stops, he brings us back in and they're kind of a bit of a laugh around. The harmonies are very well pitched. I'm not sure if it's Ozzy or tracking himself. Maybe Bill's got in on the act. Again, I don't dislike this track. But it's probably my least favourite track. So it's interesting, this album, sort of looking at it, it's got four really good tracks that I really like. And then it's got 4 other tracks that I like in varying degrees, but I don't dislike. So why is it not thought of as well? I think Sabbath's on a long run of classic albums, but I think people might forget that Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and Sabotage didn't sell quite as well as the previous albums. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath was platinum in America, but Sabotage only went gold. First time I had Sabotage, I just thought it was the greatest thing. I think some people were probably a bit freaked out about it, and probably didn't get it at the time. So some people would have been kind of pulling away from Sabbath at this point. But obviously, since then, Sabotage, you know, is rightly seen as a classic Sabbath album with some really classic tracks. Hole in the Sky and Symptom of the Universe, maybe Megalomania being the kind of tracks you might hear on something like Planet Rock. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, you know, typically pull out the title track. You might hear Spiral Architects, maybe Zabracadabra. I think with this album, we know that those early Sabbath albums always have 3 or 4 tracks that are, you know, seen as classics. This lacks a definitive track. It lacks a track that is a Sabbath evergreen. The kind of track you hear on radio, the kind of track that they play live. So that's its first sort of strike against it. It lacks a defining sort of track that gives it voice. I think there's the hard rock element of this. I think this is a hard rock album, not a heavy metal album. Having said that, Sabbath are seen as the first heavy metal band, but they never made an album that you define as pure heavy metal. That probably didn't happen until Judas Priest and British Steel. So there's that element of it. So people listening at the time were like, oh, I don't like the new Sabbath album. When you come back to these albums, you see them in more context of the whole run of Sabbath. After this, you got Never Say Die. Then Dio comes along. Then you get Born Again. Then you get the Tony Martin albums. You have the Reformation of Ozzy, 13. So you see more in this journey of Sabbath. And in that respect, it's a good Black Sabbath album. There's some good music on here. Black Sabbath are a great band. They're not going to make a terrible album. They've never made an album under the Black Sabbath name that is crap. Forbidden for ages was seen as a crap album, but now with the new remix, it's brought those songs that are really good on it to life. I think the key thing here is that Tony Iommi is the consistent thing in Sabbath, and as long as he's there, people can question the validity of like how much it's true Black Sabbath, but the bloke writes great riffs and has produced consistently good tracks on every album that have been done under the Black Sabbath name, and this album's no exception. So that's my take on it. If I was marking out of 10, going off what I've said today with the Stephen Wilson remix, I'd give it an 8 out of 10, but that maybe feels a little generous when, I'd give other albums an 8 out of 10 by Sabbath, or something like Volume 4, 7, 7.5. So I probably would go more to the 7 end of the spectrum. But I would recommend it. Check it out. It's a good record. It's an interesting record, and it's got some really good tunes and interesting ideas. Remember to share and subscribe. I'll see you again.